All right, welcome everyone to today's edition of Freelance Coffee, a podcast series where we interview the most successful online freelancers. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Matt Keener, and I've been freelancing online for about a decade now. And you can learn more about my story over at executiveinsweatpants.com. Today we're interviewing Chad Gravallese, a top-rated video marketing strategist and consultant. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. So Chad, I was looking at your stats on Upwork, and since joining Upwork as a freelancer, you've already billed over 1,000 hours and across 64 different contracts, and you've maintained a 99% job success rating, which is awesome. But before we get into how you become so successful, I thought maybe we could step back a little bit and just have you tell your story, a little brief overview of how you got into freelancing.
Yeah. So when I first graduated college, I've always wanted to freelance, to work at home, but it's kind of a subtle thought in the back of my head. And I got married about a year before I graduated, and we were planning on starting a family. And so I felt the pressure of supporting a family, and I just took a salary job instead as a video editor. I studied film in college, and commuting about 45 minutes each way. She would go to a train station, then take the train up to the city to go to work. And that only lasted about 4 months. And it just was not for me, that standard job. And I was earning about 12 an hour, doing what, and when I was talking to their lead video editor, who's been working there for 20 years, he was earning about 20 an hour, and he was getting ready to retire. And I'm thinking, so I'm going to work here for 10 years. I'm going to get from 12 to 20 an hour, and somehow I'm going to be able to build somewhat of a life. And so I ended up, I didn't actually go straight into freelancing after that. I just took another salary job with a local company as their video person, but I was working at home. So it was a remote, they had a completely remote team of employees. They'd occasionally bring on contractors. But I got to experience what it was like working at home. I was still on a salary. I was still working for one person. But then 5 months into that, I lost the job because they had to downsize their company, and they let go of a lot of people, and they just hit a huge blip. And at that moment, I realized that I really hate having one employer. And I realized how insecure it was to put all my eggs in one basket. And I thought, maybe it would be safer to diversify my income. Maybe if I had several clients and something happened to their business and they hit a rough patch and they had to let go of me as a freelancer, that I would only lose a portion of my income rather than all of it all at once. And so within a couple of weeks of losing that job, I attempted freelancing, and I started, made a profile on Upwork, and I discovered that. But 9 months into that, I quit freelancing because it was not working. I got a couple of clients here and there. But I just had my first son, probably 2 months into me trying to freelance. And my wife was she wasn't working. She was staying at home with him. And so we literally had like no income coming in, and it was just, I wasn't finding enough clients. It was kind of just sporadic and just sinking into a lot of debt. So 9 months into that, I ended up taking another salary job, with actually the same company as before, because they bounced back and they wanted me back. And a year later, after that, I then quit to attempt freelancing a second time, because
Wow.
I realized how much I did not like working for one. And the whole time I was working for them again, this pit in my stomach of like, what if I lose this again? What if for some reason they need to let go of me again, and then I lose everything? And I was going against what I knew I needed to do, but I thought that was the only way, because my first attempt didn't really work. And so I attempted freelancing a second time, but this time I decided to study and learn and find some people to teach me how to freelance, and read various books and listened to podcasts. and just found people that were teaching about freelancing. And I learned that one of my biggest weaknesses that was holding me back is that I was unwilling to sell myself. And so the second attempt around, within about 3 months, I was able to build up to replacing my income from my previous salary. And I've been doing that ever since. And so I finally got the momentum I needed to get going with freelancing. But it was a rough couple of years trying it and then bailing out and then trying it again. But there's no turning back now. And I can't imagine ever going back to just having one employer. And so that's kind of the short version of my story. So
you hit on so many points there, and it's some of the same emotions and thoughts and feelings that I've had over the years. You know, like I said, I've been doing this this is my 10th year in business, being a more or less a full-time freelancer. Early years, I was kind of like you, transitioning, but for the better part of 8 or 9 years, just doing this full time. And the one piece of your story that really stood out to me is the comment you made about diversifying your risk as a worker, as a consultant, as an employee. That's so true, because most people think, I'm going to graduate from college, I'm going to get this good job, and then I'm going to be set. You know, it's like our parents' generation, which was largely true. But the economy has changed so much. You know, technology is allowing such rapid change that, you know, the days of working for a company 30 or 40 years and then retiring with a pension are essentially gone. Mm-hmm. And so it's up to us, you know, to go out, and you really have to be willing to sell yourself. And I'm curious, how did you overcome that challenge in your career to where you were unable to be successful as a freelancer? You identified that not being able to sell yourself was a big problem. And now today, I know, looking at your profile, having worked with you, that you're very successful. I'm curious how you made that pivot point.
Partly it was, I was giving myself one more shot. And so I was finally willing to get out of my comfort zone. I've always, growing up, I was very shy, and I had a hard time connecting with people that were new. And I had a couple of close friends, but when I got into the professional world, it really hit home that I needed to learn how to talk to people, and I needed to learn how to meet new people. And so it started with me just choosing to get out of my comfort zone and accepting how uncomfortable it was going to feel. Yeah. And also realizing that I needed to be okay to actually talk to people, because, you know, I'd submit proposals and then I'd try to get them onto a phone call or a Skype call as quick as possible. And that was the most uncomfortable part, was getting onto a call with them, an interview with them, where essentially they're interviewing me, I'm also interviewing them. And so I made a goal to be able to at least do 3 to 5 of those a week. And I got to the point where when I'm doing interviews every single week, eventually the practice just allowed me to create that skill, and being able to enroll clients, and being able to figure out how to pitch my services as a solution to whatever problem they're having. And it just took that constant practice of me getting extremely uncomfortable to be able to do that. And I had to also work through some things, and just the beliefs I had regarding not feeling worth it enough to be able to be paid to do what I love. That's something that I realized, that I was almost feeling guilty, like, how come everyone doesn't have this opportunity? Like, I shouldn't be getting paid to just do what I love, and things that I'm passionate about. It feels too easy. And I had to get over that. But yeah, it took just getting really uncomfortable for a couple of months, and accepting the fact that I'm now a salesman, because I've had a bitter taste in my mouth towards sales for a lot of my life. And a lot of people do, just because they stereotype it, and they think, oh, they're just trying to push this car on me that I don't want. Yeah. And I had to just adjust my definition of sales, that it was just me helping somebody else solve a problem. And if my services are a solution to that problem, sales is great. It's an opportunity to use a certain kind of communication skill to help this business solve their problem. And so I definitely had to change my my perspective on sales and be okay and accept the fact that, hey, as a freelancer, I'm going to be selling the rest of my life. I think at first I saw it as I'll spend a couple of months finding clients, and then I'll be able to just stop and chill the rest of my life, and I'll have 5 clients that I'll just have forever. I didn't realize that I have to keep finding new opportunities if I intend to keep growing my business. I don't get to just stop. If I want to just stop, I got to go back and find a salary job that is with a secure company that I might have for 20 years. And so I had to make that shift as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So it sounds like then the second go around on freelancing, did you kind of dip your toe back into the waters, or did you say, no, I'm done with the salary, I'm just going to focus like a laser beam and make this freelancing thing work this time?
So I in a sense, I dipped my toe back in the waters a little bit, in the fact that when I first, so the person that I was working for on salary, she became one of my first clients as a freelancer, because she still wanted to work with me, but she knew that I was wanting to freelance. But the problem was I was billing like 20 to 25 hours a week for just that one client. And it brought me in enough income where I wasn't super motivated to find new clients. So I was freelancing, but I had one client, and so that kept me stuck for a little bit. And that's actually what happened that first time when I wasn't working very well. I had billed a few hours for that client. But then I had to, when I found my second client, that's when I started to believe that I could find new clients. I didn't have to just stay on this crutch of working for this one person, because it was easy. It was easy to work for her because I'd already worked for her before. It wasn't this, so the sales process was fairly simple. I didn't have to put in a lot of effort to try to sell myself at that point because I had a history. But the transition came when I then decided to find new clients, and then find more new clients, and then eventually let go of her because I had outgrown her, and she was only willing to pay me what my initial hourly wage was, which as a freelancer, I have to charge more than that because now I have overhead expenses running my own business. And I didn't realize that at first, and that kept me. So there was a little bit of back and forth in that sense, but I definitely was not considering ever going back to just a salary job or an hourly wage. So,
yeah, I think that another point that you hit on in your story is that willingness to make yourself feel uncomfortable, because that's a constant reality for freelancers. It's a constant reality probably for anybody, but especially for freelancers, because you've got that initial bit of being uncomfortable where you're trying to go out and say, all right, am I going to be able to fill these clients' needs? Am I going to be able to identify people that want to have conversations with me? You know, it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there and you see that there's 20 other people competing for the same job. It's like, well, why am I good enough to even be on the conversation with this guy or this lady? And then the second part of it is, like you said, the temptation is to just find 1 or 2 clients and then kind of sit back and be like, I got it made. I got 20 hours here and 20 hours there. But really, if you believe in what you said in terms of the diversification, it's that finding that ability to make yourself uncomfortable again and say, all right, look, I think these could be long-term clients. I'm happy with that, but I can't put half of my eggs in their basket. I've got to diversify myself to where I've got 10, 15, 20 clients, and I can somehow figure out how to serve all of their needs and help them build capacity. And I think that I've seen you kind of go in that direction, myself included. It's like helping your clients bring in other quality people to where you're not doing all the work, but you're still able to provide that high level strategic value. And I think that you could probably speak to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. What I loved about, well, it's funny because at first my whole reason why I wanted to freelance is to diversify my income, but then I immediately snapped into the just choosing one client that's willing to give me a ton of hours and then not getting comfortable to find a lot more. But now being at the point where I'm highly diversified and I'm only putting in a couple hours a week per client, the feeling of that kind of security. And it's funny because a lot of people will think, well, how is that secure? You're not being paid a salary by one company and you're not getting any of these benefits. And it's secure because if one client drops off, I lose 2 hours? I mean, I can replace that fairly quickly. But uh, it's definitely a mindset shift to be able to think that it is more secure freelancing. And
It is definitely.
it,
You've got to
yeah,
always have your ear to the ground too. You've got to always kind of be reading between the lines, like, without being paranoid. Like, what is the client really telling me here? Are they kind of trending in a different direction, or am I trending in a different direction? Are they doing something unethical that I disagree with? That, I've had to do that in my own life. As somebody who takes his faith seriously, I've had clients that say, hey, I want you to do this certain thing. And then I'm like, look, I'm going to have to just tell you, I can't do that. It's just not something that I can do. I'll be happy to keep working for you, but that's a project that I just can't take on. And it's one of those things, again, it's uncomfortable. You've got to be honest and tell them, like, look, this is not something that I can, or sometimes clients will want to be like, hey, I need you to review this legal document. I'm like, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I can help you recruit somebody who could possibly help with that. And that's the beauty of a platform like Upwork, is that really any skill you need could possibly be filled, right?
Yeah, and we can all help each other. I mean, I've had 2 clients that you referred me, that I've joined you and helped. I've
Yeah.
referred other freelancers to my other clients on aspects of things that I wasn't focusing on, and I've realized just how we can all, as this community of freelancers, really help each other to continue to find clients as well and work together. And it's kind of
Yeah.
a cool system that's very unique in that way. And I think what you touched on there with the ethics, I think it's so important that, especially at the beginning, when you're feeling a little desperate to find clients and you're not bringing in consistent income, that you've got to set for yourself rules that you're going to abide by. That, yes, over time you can be a little more picky regarding working with really high quality clients or bigger companies, but you still have to, from the get-go, you've got to have a set of ethics and rules that you don't compromise. That when a client wants you to do something that is against those rules, then you don't compromise that. For me, even one of my rules had to do with my own schedule. That even though at first I had smaller projects that I was taking on to get some traction, one thing I wasn't compromising was, if a client was going to abuse my time in that they thought they could call me at 2 a.m., they thought that they could just have me do stuff all of a sudden on a Sunday out of nowhere. Like, I stick to a specific work schedule where I work Monday through Friday, and occasionally I'll put in a couple hours on a Saturday if I need to, but for the most part, it's fairly regular business hours. And if a client can't respect those business hours and they expect me to be on call, then I won't work with them. And there are certain freelance jobs where it's your job to be on call, and that's different because you've agreed to that. You're like, okay, I'm an on-call technical support specialist for something related to your website, and if something goes down or whatever, then I'm okay, and you've agreed to that, and that's different. The types of jobs that I take on are never on call, and they're never really emergency type of things.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I've had to set is, certain rules of, this is the type of client I want to work with, and this is the type of client I won't work with. And that's an important thing to do.
Yeah. And I think too, when you're going out there, you're looking at, hey, this is a project that I see that's out there. I don't know anything about the client before I apply, other than their feedback rating and some other details I could probably research online. A lot of times, in my experience, you're dealing with the founder of the company. You're dealing with somebody who has built something from the ground up and is successful. And so a lot of times their personalities may not be exactly the same as mine. I would say I'm slightly more introverted than extroverted. And a lot of times founders of the companies are just idea guys that just want to get, as much done as possible. And they have ideas all day, every day, even while they're sleeping. And so I've had to deal with that too, where it's like a client will text me on Sunday or something. And then I have to kind of put, if they don't know my work hours, if they try to call me or something, then I'll just let them know, like, hey, look, I work normal Monday through Friday hours. If we need to set something up, like you said, on Saturday, I used to have a standing Saturday morning meeting. I've thankfully kind of pared that back even to Monday through Friday. But yeah, you've got to put those rules in place, and you've got to not be, you can't be shy to let people know, like, hey, this is what I do as a consultant. This is what I provide you. And I think people will respect you for that, you know, and if they don't
Mhm.
respect you for that, then you don't want to work for them anyway. There's too many other clients out there that will respect your time.
Yeah. And that's what I found, that there are a lot of clients that will respect your time. And at first I thought there wouldn't be, because I had a couple of bad experiences with a few clients that definitely did not, because they're going to have a variety of perspectives on these companies that go on to sites like Upwork. They're going to have their own bias and perspective of who a freelancer is. And sometimes they might think a freelancer is that kid that, just takes on extra work, but he might have another job, and he'll work weekend nights, and he'll work during the week, and he'll work Sundays, and he'll work whenever he wants. And they do see them kind of as on call. And so you have to set that expectation up front that you're a real business. And if they're a business, and a fairly normal business, they should understand that, because they likely have normal business hours. They likely work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and then their doors are closed. And so as a freelancer, you have to decide for yourself, when are your doors going to close, and what's going to work for you, because every person's going to have their own thing that works for them. Everyone's going to have their own definition of life work balance.
Yeah.
I have my own definition of what that means, and how much time I want to be spending with my family versus working. And other people are, yeah. And so you just have to figure out for yourself, what are you willing to, or what are you not willing to sacrifice? And because we can easily sacrifice our health, and we can sacrifice time with our family, working at home as much as we can, working for another job that maybe takes us away from the house for long periods of time. And so we just have to, we have to set those rules for ourselves. And
On the work-life balance, maybe we could zoom in on that a little bit, because I know in my own life, the only way that I can get close to a work-life balance is to set rules for myself, and say, look, Monday through Friday, I'm going to be done by 5 p.m. Today, and I'm just going to do everything. That's one of my big goals for the day, is to be done by 5 o'clock. And even if I'm done, I don't have a commute. It's out that door, down the stairs, and then the kids are, wrestling or something. It's not like a real job where you've got a 20-minute drive and you can, pray or listen to music or whatever to kind of get into things. So I'm curious, how do you find that balance, especially at the end of the day, where you've got all these loose ends from the day in your mind that you've got to kind of unravel in order to be a good dad and a good husband?
Yeah. For a while, when I was first getting back into freelancing, luckily my wife was able to call me out, because I'd be done. I'd leave my home office, but I definitely wasn't present. I wasn't there. I had all these work things still in my mind, and she could see it, and she's like, your cogs are running. What are you thinking about? It's like you're checked out. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking about this work thing and what I have to do tomorrow for this client. And so I ended up I had to create a different time management system to help me to actually close my doors, because I use different apps. I use Trello, and I use Swipes on my phone, and I have a couple of different time management and task management apps that I use. And I found that one thing that I had to do is, when I'm done with work, I used to have, so I have, like, on my phone, I list out all the daily tasks that I need to do for each client that I'm hoping to achieve by the end of the day. And if I don't achieve certain tasks for a specific client by the end of the day, I used to just keep all of that on today's task list. But what it would do is that when I knew that it was there on my phone, that there were unfinished things, then it stayed on my mind. So now when I go into my app, if there's 2 or 3 tasks that I need to roll over into tomorrow, I'll just click on it and I'll move it to tomorrow. And then that way it actually disappears from today's task list. And just mentally, that has helped me to look, when I look at there and there's 0 tasks and it's all cleared out, I'm like, oh, I'm done for the day. I can actually go and hang out with my family. Whereas before, I had all these, I'd put, well, what I would also do is I would list out all the tasks that I want to get done for the whole week. And I would just keep going through whatever I could each day. And then so I have the entire week's tasks on my mind. And that also prevented me from being able to be present with my family. So it's just some time management tweaks and task management tweaks that have helped me to really close my doors when I'm done. And I even had just to kind of remind me, on my wall, I have like a little open and close sign, like you would on the front of a store. Really? And I literally just switch that to open, and it's like green. And then I switch it to close when I'm done. And that just mentally almost shows me that, okay, I'm now at home. And it's also helped too, because I have a 3-year-old son, and I have another one on the way pretty soon.
Oh, congrats.
And he's definitely getting to the age where he wants to play during the day sometimes. And he's like knocking on dad's door and he's like, I want to play. And so I've had to learn how to communicate with him that even though he doesn't fully understand what I'm doing, that these are the hours that I'm having to work. And it's just depending on whatever your situation is, whether you have a family at home or not, you just have to figure out you have to set those boundaries, and you have to decide what's going to work for you regarding what's going to help you stay focused and get done what you need to get done. So
yeah. And I think, does your wife stay at home with the kids?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my wife does too. And I think having a spouse that buys into it is so important. I mean, it can't be stated enough, really. And we were blessed early on. I think after our second child, we have 4 boys. After our second child, my wife, who was a teacher, she was able to resign and just stay home with the kids. And it's great for many reasons, but one of which is that she kind of helps enforce, like, hey, daddy's working right now. If he weren't here, he'd be at another office, right? And so when we're in a meeting like this, it's, sometimes the kids march in, you can't do anything about it, right? But a lot of times, like, having that's just part of like our family culture, is that when daddy's working, like, he's at a job, right? And it's not like daddy can come down and, fix something unless it's an emergency, right? And so I think that's been a blessing for us, is to be able to have everybody here. And whenever I go down and get coffee or fill up my water cup or whatever, it's like I get to have a little snapshot in time of what's going on in the family that I wouldn't get otherwise. That's one of the benefits of doing what we do. It's not just being at home and not being in a cubicle somewhere. It's that you do get to have that little moment in time, like the kids are eating a snack or being cute or something,
Yeah, no, that I love is that, one, to your point of everyone in the house has got to be on the same page regarding those rules, regarding when dad's working, he's got to work. And what I do is I actually have a system with my door that's just behind me, where if my door is shut and it's locked, then I'm in like some kind of a meeting. There definitely cannot be any interruption. And that's that. If my door is just shut but not locked, then it means I'm focusing on something. And if it's an emergency or whatever, or if you need something from the office, you can walk in and it'll be fine, but I'm not going to go and play, or I'm focusing on something. I need to stay focused. If my door is cracked, you can come in for a moment and you can interact with me for a little bit. And it means I am working because I'm in here, but I'm working on something that maybe doesn't take as much focus. And It's okay if, like, my son has his own little desk actually in the corner, because sometimes he'll come in here and do his own little art stuff while I'm working. And then if my door is full on open, it means I'm maybe getting ready for lunch, and it's okay if you're in and out, and I'm just kind of doing some administrative stuff or whatever. But I love having those moments where, I'm working fairly normal hours, 7 or 8 hours a day. But I feel like I'm seeing my family a lot because of those tiny moments where I take a 5-minute break and I play with my son a little bit, and then I'm back up and I'm working. And, for him, he feels as if dad is here a lot of the time, even though to him, he's probably not realizing that I'm working 7 or 8 hours a day because of all those little moments throughout the day. And then when I usually take a 1-hour lunch break and I'm having lunch with them, I have breakfast with them. And to him, it's weird, because the other day he was talking about how, like, we have cousins that live right down the road, and his uncle, goes to a job at an office, and he was confused by that. He's like, but dad's work at home. And he was like, he thinks that it's normal that dad works at home, and that's just what he's used to. And it's just, so it's just funny. But
I wonder how that'll play out in their minds. It's like because anytime I go downstairs or whatever, it's like the kids are always like, "You done working, daddy?" So they
exactly.
know what I've been doing and where I am and what working is. Well, that's a good thing. On the other hand, it's like if they have to go to a real job someday, and they can't work at home for whatever reason, or they're a scientist or something, or a doctor, I'm sure they'll kind of adapt to that. But at least in our culture, here in this family, this is what reality is. So.
Yeah.
You mentioned administrative stuff too. I know we're probably wrap it up here in a minute, but I'm curious, like, how much are you finding yourself doing more administrative work, or have you found ways to, like, because every minute you're doing like accounting work and managing your tasks and planning out your day, it's important. It's got to be done, but it's also time that is taking away either from your family time or from billable hours. And just curious, on a typical week, like how much of your time is billable versus non-billable work stuff?
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely a process figuring out what was going to work best for me. I used to kind of just randomly do administrative stuff whenever, and it ended up taking a lot more time because I ended up having to keep like backpedaling. But now what I do is every morning I spend about 10 or 15 minutes just planning out my day. And then the rest of the day, I'm essentially billing clients. Monday mornings, I usually spend a little bit more time than that planning out the week. And then Friday mornings is my accounting time where I spend 30 minutes. It's usually not more than 30 minutes doing all my accounting, where I'm transferring money from business accounts to personal accounts and making sure that invoices are paid and sending things out as needed. Because I used to do that just randomly throughout the whole week. And also I was doing it throughout the whole week before because I was not organized enough. And so sometimes a client would pay an invoice and the very same day I used that money to pay a utility bill. I mean, because I was so crunched with paying bills versus business stuff that it was just a mess. And now that I'm a few weeks ahead, it's not as much of a stress if a client doesn't pay an invoice right on time. And the advantage of Upwork is that, I have more than half of my work comes from Upwork. And so it provides a consistent baseline where every Thursday, I know that money's going to get dropped into my bank account from all my Upwork hours. They don't have to go in and remember to pay an invoice. And that's one advantage I've liked of Upwork is it saves some of that administrative time for the client and for me, where it just automatically generates the invoice. It automatically withdraws it from their account. And I know I'm going to have that money coming in on a certain day. And that's why I've liked having that escrow service. But that's what so for the amount of time I'm spending, I usually spend, I say 10 hours a week on administrative time, but I'm also including the time I'm spending networking, the time I'm spending on this podcast interview with you, the time I'm spending prospecting, getting on calls with potential clients, following up with leads, and everything like that to grow my business. And even doing things like maybe creating content to help freelancers and other business ventures that are more passion projects. I work into that 10 or so hours a week. And then I usually bill about 27 to 30 hours a week. And that to me allows me to have the life work balance that I want. Because if I'm billing 27 to 30 and I have 10 of administrative time, that's about 40 hours a week. And to me, when I was working more than 40 hours a week, I didn't have the time with my family that I wanted. So essentially every day I'm done at 5:00, and I have the weekends off, and I follow a fairly, typical corporate schedule, but I'm in control of it. And so if all of a sudden we want to go on a hike on a Wednesday afternoon, then we do that. But then I just work for a couple hours on Saturday morning, and I can do that. And that's what's great. But I have a default schedule that I stick to. And typically that's what it is. But because I'm only billing 27 to 30 hours a week, I've had to continue to raise my rate throughout the years and work up towards that, knowing that I have to make up for the fact that I'm not billing 40 hours. And so I can't compare it to a normal job. If I'm billing $50 an hour, then I'm only taking home maybe 35 of that. If I'm billing 75, then maybe I'm taking home 50 or less, because you have business expenses to account for. You have all the time I have to account for that I'm not billing. I'm not billing all the time that I'm networking and doing everything else. And so I've had to restructure in a way to be able to cover that.
Yeah. I mean, there's some hidden costs to being a freelancer, you got to pay self-employment tax. You've got to, for us, like my wife doesn't work outside the home, so we've got to pay full for all of our health insurance situations. There's some real costs to that. And as you start your freelancing business, I think that's a big barrier for a lot of people. It's like, how would I make this transition if I'm a full-time worker at a job? Yeah, I mean, what you guys are saying is great, but I got bills to pay. I can't do this. So maybe we'll end there. Like, what would you say to the person that's out there working a 9-to-5 job and, feeling stressed, not liking his work-life balance? What would you say in terms of considering this type of transition?
I'd say start getting educated while you still have your job, because could take a few months to build up to be able to be earning enough income. And so spend some time in the morning, spend some time on the weekend, start building in time to your schedule to learn how to freelance, start figuring out what you want to freelance in. Maybe if you need to gain a certain skill that you're going to sell as part of your freelance business, then work on gaining that skill. And you can even take on a couple of side jobs that are small projects to build up a bit of a portfolio until you get to the point where you feel like, okay, I'm starting to learn how to find clients, and you have that level of confidence where you can quit your job, and you know you're not going to be spending 6 months not paying your bills because you didn't go through that learning curve. You know, for me, I had to learn it very quickly because I lost the job and I didn't have a chance to like learn how to do it while I was getting income from another source. I had no income from another source. So I definitely suggest kind of just taking the time you need to start transitioning before you quit your job, so that you're ready to. Because then if you're desperate, it's very hard to sell yourself when you're desperate, because there's certain energy you put off when you're talking with clients that actually pushes them away. So
yeah, people want, in my experience with this last comment, but people, whenever I'm interviewing with potential clients, they always, it's like when you say, kind of give an indication that, look, I'm pretty busy, you know, like don't say that, but they get the sense that you're busy and you've got stuff going on. That makes them want you even more. Like they don't want some guy that's just like desperate for work and, you know, yeah, I'll do it for $5 an hour. I mean, there's probably some people that would want that, but I think there's that energy that you speak of, you know, it's like this confidence, and be confident in your skills, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Chad, I think that wraps it up. Again, thank you again for joining us, Chad. It's been a good discussion here. And for everybody that's interested in learning more about how to build your freelance portfolio and your skills, be sure to check out executiveandsweatpants.com for some additional freelancing and outsourcing best practices. All right, we'll catch you next time, guys. Thanks.